3 bone-chilling reasons why surrendering to God changes everything today. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an eerie orange glow over the little town of Lawson. Something sinister lingered in the air, as if the very fabric of reality had shifted. All eyes were glued to the old church on the corner of Maple and Pine, its wooden steeple leaning precariously, whispering secrets of the past. People said if you listened closely, you could hear the prayers of the lost souls who surrendered there, and the chilling echoes of those who never returned. As Sarah crossed the threshold of the church, an unsettling shiver crawled up her spine. The worn wooden door creaked like a ghostly wail, announcing her entrance. She could almost taste the lingering scent of burnt candles and faded dreams. The stained glass windows flickered in the dim light, casting strange shadows that danced along the walls. Each grotesque figure seemed to come alive in the flickering glow, begging for release from their eternal torment. What had she walked into? Just as she took her seat, a strange man stood at the altar. His voice was low, almost a whisper, yet it resonated deep within her bones. "You can change your fate," he preached, each word bouncing off the cold stone walls. He spoke about surrendering to something greater, a powerful force she could hardly comprehend. As he wove his tale, vivid images formed in her mind. Family members lost, friendships fractured, lives stolen, all miracles waiting to happen once someone opened their heart. A tightness gripped her chest. Could surrender lead to salvation? Or was it a trap? Just then, a loud crash echoed from the back of the church. Everyone turned, breath hitching in their throats. An object, perhaps a pew, toppled over. A scattered gasp swept through the crowd. In that moment of fear, time stretched. The man turned ever so slowly towards the noise. Was it the stirring of the spirits, drawn to the allure of the sermon? Or something darker lurking in the shadows? An unexplainable chill swept through the room, raising goosebumps on Sarah's arms. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The church fell into an uneasy silence, the air thick with dread. Sarah could feel it in her bones, a truth beckoning her from the depths. The preacher took a step forward, a wild gleam in his eye. You don't just surrender. You step into a destiny filled with power, but it demands everything. The tension tightened around them like a noose, drawing in every breath, every heartbeat. Could it be? Could anyone truly understand the cost of such surrender? As shadows shifted and the reality outside grew dimmer, Sarah felt an overwhelming urge to escape, to run far away from this confrontation with fate. But the truth lingered, like a haunting melody that wouldn't let go. Each flicker of candlelight was a whisper, a plea what would happen if she surrendered? And as she pondered, the shadows deepened, wrapping around her like an embrace, promising both terror and hope. What awaited her door, slowly creaking open. The door creaked open, sending a wave of icy air through the church. Shadows twisted and danced as if the darkness itself was alive, eager to wrap around Sarah. She squinted, trying to make sense of the vague figure emerging at the threshold. Was it real or just a figment of her racing mind? The preacher's voice pierced her thoughts, rising above the uncertainty. What lies beyond this door? He questioned, his tone dripping with urgency. Fear? Freedom? Choice? The audience held its breath, every eye fixed on Sarah. She felt the weight of their collective gaze like 1,000 needles. This wasn't just about her. It felt like a test for everyone. Taking a tentative step forward, she squinted, finding that the doorway spilled forth red light, a stark contrast to the cold gloom of the church. The figure stepped into the glow, tall and draped in a black cloak, the hood shrouding their face. A cold sweat broke out on Sarah's brow. She could feel a pulsing energy emanating from the stranger, a chaotic mix of fear and allure. "Come, child," the figure beckoned, their voice smooth and intoxicating. "Embrace what you seek. Do not be afraid. Do not listen to him," the preacher thundered, his voice rising in a fervor that echoed off the walls, filling the space with an electric intensity. "He is an illusion, a siren meant to lure you into darkness. Your surrender is a sacred gift. Give it to God, not to this fiend." The congregation murmured, confusion rippling like a wave. Who was this cloaked figure? What did they want? Sarah's heart thumped in her chest. The contrast between the urgent urgency of the preacher and the inviting call from the shadows set her nerves on fire. "Choose," the deep voice from the doorway thundered, reverberating through her very being. "What has God given you? Seek what you deserve. Power, recognition, and the life you desire await if you embrace the truth." The preacher stepped between Sarah and the figure, visibly shaken yet commanding. "I urge you, think of your choices. What do you value more, temporary allure or eternal salvation? You hold the reins of your fate." Panic swelled in the pit of Sarah's stomach. How could she possibly make sense of this? Each moment stretched, every heartbeat loud enough to drown out the indecision swirling in her mind. The cloaked figure's voice dropped to a wild whisper. "You already know the truth, you've just been told otherwise. Look inside. Your destiny is not dictated by fear." The preacher's eyes burned with desperation. "It's a fork in your path. Please, you must choose wisely. The stakes are higher than." Suddenly, the church was plunged into darkness as all the candles flickered and died. Gasps erupted, and Sarah felt her skin crawl. The figures beneath the stained glass windows seemed to watch her with a tormenting gaze, their silhouettes glaring like guardians of a hidden truth. In that moment, the cloaked figure surged forward, filling the air with a powerful aura that left her breathless. Sarah felt the walls closing in, the flickering shadows tossing like waves in a storm. Her body trembled, and for the first time, panic gripped her. What was the choice that truly lay before her? What awaited her on the other side? In the chaotic silence, Sarah could barely breathe, her thoughts spiraling. Whatever decision she made, it would come with consequences she couldn't begin to comprehend, and as she stood teetering on the edge of fate, another crash echoed from the shadows, louder than the last. A chorus of sinister whispers filled the air. What had awakened? What more awaited her in the depths of the dark? The moment stretched, and Sarah knew she had to act, but would she choose salvation or surrender to the darkness? The air crackled with a tension so thick Sarah could almost taste it. The darkness swallowed the church, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. She strained her eyes, desperate for a glimpse of clarity, but the only color that pierced the blackness was the fiery red outlining the figure. The congregation's whispers grew manic, the sounds swirling around her like anxious bees, buzzing with uncertainty. Sarah, the hooded figure, drawled, their voice hypnotic, almost seductive. "Those who seek shall find. You yearn for change, for something deeper. Let the past fade and allow the power within you to rise." "Don't listen," the preacher shouted, his voice rising above the chaos, trembling now with an urgency that felt almost primal. "You're stronger than this. What lies on the other side won't bring you peace, you'll only find emptiness." She looked between the two, embodiment of conflicting desires. The hooded figure exuded an energy that both terrified and exhilarated her. Embrace power or cling to the safety of the familiar. The thought tore at her, unwinding her thoughts in a desperate spiral. "Think of your family, your friends," the preacher's voice softened, imploring. "You are never alone. Choose light over shadows." The ground beneath her felt unstable, like she might sink into the earth itself. Sarah's heart raced louder, drowning out the preacher's words. The whispers grew frantic, clawing at her mind, filling it with images of glory and revenge, of being untethered and boundless. A sharp crack echoed from behind her. The aged wooden beams of the church creaked ominously, sending droplets of dust cascading into the air. Sarah turned, pulse ricocheting against her skull. Her mind screamed, urging her to run away from the figure that had begun converging closer. And yet something within her deepened, igniting a flicker of intrigue. "Isn't this what you've wanted?" The figure took another step forward, voice now close enough to send shivers down her spine. "You've felt trapped for too long. Break free. All your desires are waiting. Just reach out." Sarah's breath hitched, realization flooding in. This was more than a choice. This was a reckoning. But as she felt a surge of power ripple through her, a deafening crash ricocheted from the rafters. The very foundation of the church trembled, and someone from the congregation screamed a raw, fractured sound that rang like a bell of warning. "Run! Get out!" Someone shouted amidst the chaos, but the wayward energy threatened to pull her quite the opposite way. A vortex of shadows stirred around her, drawing her deeper into an unknown void. The preacher shouted, words rising in a fever pitch, but the figure simply extended a hand, beckoning. "Take control of your destiny. It's yours to seize, child." The power of choice encompassed Sarah, a feeling as intoxicating as it was terrifying. She glared at the cloaked figure, confusion and anger swirling like a tempest. And just as she prepared to either defy fate or embrace it, a light flickered through the darkness, illuminating something hidden in the shadows. What was that spark? Was it hope or a warning of what awaited her? The very air herself seemed to pulse with an undeniable weight, and Sarah knew she must act. Could she trust what was on the other side? As the shadows loomed closer, shivering at the edges of her vision, she felt an electrifying decision looming. Would she take that fateful step into the unknown, or turn her back on the darkness threatening to consume her? The very fabric of her existence weighed down on her choice. And that question cut through the chaos. What lay behind the veil? The flickering light grew stronger, revealing a twisted path of broken stones and tangled roots, seemingly leading into the very heart of the church's darkness. The ground beneath her trembled, as if the earth itself was protesting her indecision. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to flee, yet the allure of the figure stood strong, its fiery gaze penetrating into her very being. "Choose, Sarah," the figure whispered, voice dripping with a heady mix of temptation and promise. "What have you truly left to lose? Can you feel the power coursing through you? It's exhilarating." Fear and excitement danced in her chest, a chaotic ballet that left her breathless. She spun back to the preacher, whose face was etched with anguish, determination replaced by desperate urgency. "Listen to me," he implored, desperation causing his voice to crack. "It's a lie. What they offer is an illusion of false freedom." Without breaking eye contact with the cloaked figure, Sarah felt gravity shift inside her. The whispers from the congregation faded into a dull roar, drowned by the thumping of her heart. The moment stretched like an elastic band ready to snap. Her feet shifted, almost moving of their own accord 5 steps closer to the tantalizing glow. The air thickened with electricity, raising the tiny hairs on her arms as she considered the swirling shadows. Each heartbeat echoed with the weight of expectation, the congregation watching her, some faces twisted with fear, some infused with a flicker of hope. "Do you feel it?" The figure's voice was low, as smooth as molasses. "Don't you want to experience what lies beyond? No more pain, no more shackles." As it spoke, the light behind it grew, bathing its cloak in radiance, the outline shifting, almost human. But then the preacher stepped forward. "Sarah, fight it. Your spirit yearns for truth, not deception. Do not let the darkness masquerade as salvation." Each word punctured the haze in her mind. Suddenly, the light and the shadows clashed violently within her, battling for dominance. She clutched her heart, feeling the pulse beneath her fingers, a steady reminder that she was alive, that she mattered. The church quaked, and with it, the congregation tensed. A sound like thunder reverberated through the air. The crowd's fear rolled over her like a wave, pushing her back an inch. Just as panic threatened to claim her, a familiar warmth ignited within. It flickered like a candle's flame struggling against the wind. "Sarah, trust. Fight." The preacher shouted again, his voice piercing through the din, like a lighthouse guiding a ship through stormy waters. Suddenly, her memory surged, her mother's laugh, the comfort of a warm embrace, the sense of belonging. Everything she fought for flashed before her, giving her strength. Taking a shuddering breath, she looked back toward the figure, defiance bubbling to the surface. "You don't own me," she shouted, the words ripping free. "I will not give in." The figure recoiled slightly, shadows wavering, and in that moment, she could see the flickering edge of fear in the crimson essence. Then the ground shook fiercely, the old church groaning under an unseen force. The walls trembled, dust and splintering would cascading down like tears. A cacophony of screams erupted, one piercing shriek cutting through the chaos, raising the hair on her neck. "Help us!" someone cried, and before she could process it, Sarah's heart sank. The shadows, spurred into frenzy, spiraled toward the congregation. They engulfed people whole, snatching cries and snuffing out hope like candle flames extinguished by a careless breath. Panic surged through her veins. But what could she do? Even as a surge of instinct screamed at her to act, a new fear clawed at her, blurring her vision. Was she brave enough to confront the darkness rising before her? Would she choose to fight for them or succumb to the beckoning call of empowerment that the hooded figure promised? In that harrowing moment, as horrors unfolded around her, the question echoed. How much was she willing to sacrifice to save those she loved? The church trembled, shadows darkening all around, and Sarah felt the immense pull of destiny closing in once again. What would she decide as the echoes of her choice beckoned louder, pleading with her to take a stand? Would she embrace the darkness or ignite the fierce light of defiance? The shadows twisted and contorted, morphing into grotesque shapes that clawed at the very fabric of reality. A chorus of panicked breaths filled the air, rising like a tide of desperation. Sarah's heart galloped as she scanned the congregation. Eyes widened in terror, mouths formed silent screams. They were entrapped in the malevolent dance of shadows, paralyzed by fear. "Fight! You must choose light!" The preacher's voice boomed, a beacon amid the chaos. Just then, something snapped inside Sarah. The warmth within her morphed into a raging inferno. She lifted her chin, no longer just a bystander. She was a warrior, and the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. This wasn't just her fight. It was for everyone who had ever felt the cold fingers of despair clutching at their hearts. "No!" she shouted, her voice fierce and commanding, slicing through the thickening shadows. "You think you can scare us into submission? You're wrong." The figure recoiled, momentarily losing its grip on the darkness. It hesitated, as if calculating its next move, revealing a flicker of vulnerability. The congregation, sensing her courage, began to shift, small murmurs of hope igniting like sparks in a dry field. "Together," Sarah urged, "we can break the darkness." The preacher nodded, emboldened by her defiance. He stepped alongside her, locking eyes with the audience, igniting their courage like a flame catching kindling. "We are not alone. Fear is not our master." As waves of energy pulsed from Sarah, the room brightened. It felt like a burst of sunlight had pierced the veil of despair. One by one, the congregation stood tall, shoulders squared, and hands clenched into fists. They were not mere spectators anymore. They were participants in the resurgence of their hope. Then, like ripples in a pond, they began to chant, their voices intertwining, blending into a symphony of strength. "We choose light. We choose hope." The figure writhed, shadows flickering violently. The air cracked and hummed, electricity running like a river through them as their collective will surged against the dark. "Stop! Stop this!" the figure shrieked, voice distorted with rage. "You're stronger than you think, but the darkness is your true home." Sarah took a step forward, feeling the heat of determination radiate from her being, a vision of her loved ones shining before her. "You're wrong. Home is where love resides. We are light, and we will not let darkness take us." In that instant, the air shifted again, an invisible barrier forming between the congregation and the figure. Dread gripped Sarah's heart as she noticed the shadows coiling tighter around her friends, reaching with desperate fingers. It was clawing for their will, their resolve, their very souls. "Keep fighting," she cried, her voice a rallying cry. But their resolve was now entwined with her own, intertwining into an unbreakable bond. But then, the church trembled with renewed fury. The figure drew back, its voice a slithering hiss. "You'll regret this, there are depths of darkness you cannot imagine." The shadows pulsed, swirling like a storm gathering strength. Sarah felt the temperature drop, her breath visible in the thickening air. Was this the moment they would be engulfed? Or would they shatter the chains binding them? In that fleeting moment of uncertainty, she caught a glimpse of something. Was it beneath the figure? A shimmering light flickering, signaling a deeper truth? "Whatever happens, we stand together," Sarah shouted, crashing against the weight of dread. The shadows wailed, and the ground trembled again, almost begging for a resolution. Desperation turned to determination as Sarah squared her shoulders, heart racing, ready to confront whatever horror awaited them. Could they overcome not just the figure, but the darkness within themselves? As the shadows brewed and the congregants held hands tighter, the question hung heavy in the air. How far would they go to reclaim their light? Would they discover the truth behind the darkness, or would they fall into the abyss? With the storm closing in and hope flickering like a candle fighting against the wind, Sarah prepared for the ultimate confrontation. Time was running out. The shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of darkness crashing down on them. Sarah felt its icy tendrils clawing at her skin, wrapping around her ankles, pulling her down, deeper into despair. She fought against the grip, the cold gnawing at her resolve. But she couldn't falter now, not when hope had been reignited in those around her. The preacher's voice thundered through the chaos, lending strength to their resolve. "Remember who you are. You are children of the light. Let it shine." And then there it was. That flicker of light beneath the figure deepened, expanding like a golden sun rising from the ashes. It pierced the shadows like a blade, seeking out each desperate heart among them. Sarah could see the faint glow in the eyes of her friends, their faces lifted toward the light, transforming their fear into fierce determination. "Hold on to each other," she shouted, grasping hands in the crowd, channeling the warmth between them. The bond felt electric, alive, pulsating with courage. The figure recoiled again, voice dripping with venom. "You truly believe you can conquer the darkness? You are weak. The light won't save you." It lashed out, the shadows whipping violently, aiming for the cracks between the human spirits. But as a response, a shimmering light shattered the darkness, radiating outwards. It seemed to repel the shadows, pushing them back, fainting their grasp. Sarah stepped into the glow, feeling its warmth radiate through her. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, accepting the strength whipping through her very core, the very essence of love and hope. "Together, we shine brighter." She felt their voices merging within her, richer and stronger, pulling the light forward. The figures in the congregation began to rise, face after face filled with determination. Suddenly, the air filled with resonating chants. "We are light. We are love. We will rise." The figure staggered, caught somewhere between fury and fear, shadows buckling under the flood of defiance. It screamed, voice a harrowing sound reverberating through the church. "Foolish mortals, what you awaken will consume you." But the light surged, illuminating every corner of the church. A kaleidoscope of colors erupted like fireworks, casting out the shadows like a violent storm cleansing the night. And then, she saw it, a vision of the figure's true form, its terrifying shape shifting, revealing a tortured past melded with bright flashes of suffering and pain. It was a shadow born of despair, but a creature once pure. A realization hit Sarah hard. This darkness was a reflection of their own inner battles. "No, we refuse to let our darkness define us," she shouted, heart pounding in her chest, fear giving way to newfound purpose. "You have no dominion here." The congregation echoed her words, unleashing their inner fire. The radiant beam erupted from them, enveloping the figure and igniting the depths of its shadow. It twisted and writhed, a scream erupting that shook the very foundations of the church. Then time stood still. The figure dissolved into wisps of smoke, like a phantom caught in a storm. Yet, even as the shadows retreated, Sarah felt a shivering dread settle in her heart. Behind the fading darkness, a new shadow loomed larger, denser, a presence so profoundly cold it sent shivers up her spine. "What have you done?" it hissed, reverberating through the walls, louder than the last scream. "You will pay for this. There are more of us than you realize." A chill swept through the congregation, their hands shaking as they tightened their grip. "What is coming?" they whispered in fear, panic flickering in their eyes. Sarah's heart sank. She was filled with dread yet steeled with resolve. "Whatever it is, we will face it together," she said, though uncertainty wormed its way through her thoughts. As the layer of darkness cracked, a greater threat appeared on the horizon. What had they awakened? What other shadows lurked, waiting for their moment to strike? An echo of a whisper floated through the air, tantalizing and terrifying. "Prepare yourselves, the true battle is just beginning." With the words hanging heavily in the air, the congregation braced for the impending storm. The air thickened with an almost tangible dread, wrapping around Sarah and her friends like a heavy fog. The whispers of fear multiplied, creating a symphony of anxiety in the church's once sacred space. The flickering light was still there, but shadows rippled like dark water, reaching out towards them, hungry and relentless. Sarah turned her focus back to the looming figure outside the thinning darkness. It twisted and slithered, building a massive shadow that threatened to engulf everything they had just reclaimed. She could feel her friends' hands trembling within her grasp, a physical reminder of their shared fear. Each heartbeat echoed with doubt. What awaited them on the other side of this battle? "Stay together," she urged, her voice cutting through the tension. "We've got something they don't." Each other. The congregation rallied, stepping closer, their resolve igniting anew. But a cold laugh, sharp and seething with malice, rattled the rafters. "You are brave, mortals," the shadow taunted, "but bravery alone breeds foolishness. What you unleash tonight is just a fragment of what lurks in the depths. I am merely a messenger of the ending you all deserve. Can you truly face what comes? The gathering will soon be upon you." Sarah's breath caught, a lump tightening in her throat. What did it mean by a gathering? Her heart raced as menacing images danced at the edges of her mind. Dark figures emerging from the void, perhaps even more sinister than what they had just confronted. "Help us! We will not succumb," she cried out, drawing on every ounce of faith she had. The preacher raised his hands, igniting a chorus of voices that rose and fell like waves. "We will stand. We will shine." The air crackled, and for a moment, it felt as if the light from within could push back the shadows. But the cold presence only tightened, a vice around their spirits. The laughter turned to a growl, echoing ominously beneath the high ceiling. "Fools! You cannot shine bright enough to banish your own darkness. I bring with me the fragments of your forgotten nightmares. The shadows will feast upon your shadows, and their hunger is insatiable." Behind Sarah, she heard a gasp. Someone had stepped back, fear taking hold as the press of warmth began to wane. She glanced back at her friends. Doubt flickered in their eyes. One by one, she watched as they hesitated, shadows creeping into their hearts. "No!" Sarah shouted, clenching the hands around hers tighter. "Don't give in. We can fight this. Remember, it's not just about us. It's about everyone waiting for light." But the echoes of uncertainty whispered promises that it would be easier to yield, to accept the inevitable, but she could feel her own resolve hardening. This darkness could not define them. She glanced up, readying herself to traverse the fog of fear. Then it shattered. The figure lunged, dark tendrils racing towards them, eyes aglow with predatory hunger. "Prepare," she yelled, but the command felt faint even to her own ears. As the congregation held firm, the shadows tangled and twined towards them, a mass of black fury. The walls trembled and the floor shook beneath their feet. A crash echoed, nearly drowning out their chants. Then, a blinding light burst forth from the center of the gathering, illuminating the vast shadows, pushing back the darkness for a heartbeat longer. But doubt still lingered like a ghost. Were they truly ready for what was to come? What lies ahead will test us all. A voice whispered from the depths of the shadows, chilling Sarah's bones. And you have no idea what you've awakened. As the light flickered and dimmed, she felt her heart race against the encroaching darkness. The true battle was right at the door. Sarah took a deep breath, those words echoing in her mind, a promise and a warning. Could they withstand the gathering storm? Would the shadows claim them, or could they rise against the tide? The air was electric with apprehension, time bending as they braced for the inevitable clash. The darkness welled up like a rising tide. Sarah's heart pounded as she stood on the precipice of confrontation, her voice nearly swallowed by the tempest brewing around them. "We can't let fear win," she screamed, a desperate plea that reverberated across the trembling walls of the church. The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if stung by her defiance. A soft glow flared in the center of the congregation, warm and inviting. It was as if their collective hope was manifesting, forming a barrier against the encroaching darkness. But it flickered, uncertain, casting eerie shadows that writhed like live things. "Keep it steady," the preacher's voice rang out, filled with a fierce determination. "Together, we form a wall, no darkness can breach it." But the shadows laughed again, a chorus of chilling echoes that pierced through their resolve. "Together, you think that your unity can withstand the truth?" The mocking tones slithered through the air, dissolving the warmth in an instant. "You are but fleeting sparks in a vast void. Your light will falter, and when it does, I will be here, relishing your despair." Sarah swallowed hard, a bitter taste filling her mouth. She could feel her friends wavering, the grip of their hands loosening as doubt weighed heavy in their hearts. "No, now is not the time to hesitate," she urged, pulling their hands tighter. "We're stronger than this." Yet, to her horror, she noticed that it wasn't just the darkness threatening to consume them, it was their own fears, their individual demons clawing at the edges of their minds. One by one, she saw faces pale, eyes widening in recognition of their hidden fears. The shadows seemed to whisper secrets only they could hear, reminders of every moment of weakness they had ever experienced. A burst of laughter echoed from the swirling mass, sending icy shivers down her spine. A towering shadow surged forward, its form twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes resembling each of them, each illusion a mirror reflecting their darkest moments. "Do you see?" it howled. "This is who you are. You cannot escape it. Surrender, and I will free you of this torment." Sarah felt the tremors in the hands she held. A friend in the back staggered, tears rolling down her cheeks, the light dimming in her eyes as fear consumed her. "Sarah, I can't fight this, no," Sarah shouted again, panic escalating. "You have to remember the light. Everyone here has a reason to stand." But the shadows pressed closer, stretching and reaching, tantalizing and insatiable. The edges of their form glistened with malevolence as the darkness sought out their vulnerabilities, invading their thoughts, poisoning their margins. "I will show you true despair," the dark entity hissed, slithering closer still. A bright pulse ignited at the center of the congregation, a flicker of defiance fueled by Sarah's fear. Gathering the last shreds of courage, she raised her free hand to the heavens. "We stand firm. Together we are the light." Echoes returned with heartfelt voices, simmering like an unquenchable fire, desperate and alive. The shadows recoiled, shrieking as the warmth forged a crack in their suffocating hold. But Sarah's heart raced with terror. Was it enough? Was their unity strong enough to repel the storm? Then, without warning, a deafening crash erupted, shattering the fragile barrier they had created. The ground beneath them cracked open like a wound, a swirling void threatening to swallow all that they had fought for. And amidst it all, a flicker of hope broke through, a tiny flame that pulsed in response to their cries. "Don't look away," she pleaded, but the very essence of her determination felt precarious. They were on the edge of annihilation. Time itself felt suspended, each breath heavy with the weight of impending doom. "What will you choose, Sarah?" a voice whispered, softer yet more terrifying than the chaos surrounding them. As the darkness loomed, ready to consume them whole, Sarah struggled to find her voice amid the cacophony, knowing whatever lay ahead could change everything. But could their collective will be enough to stand against a gathering forged from their deepest fears? Would they rise, or fall into the abyss? The crack in the ground widened, swallowing fragments of the sanctuary pews, prayer books, even the stained glass that held close promises of light. Panic erupted like wildfire. The collective fear split the congregation. People screamed, scrambling for the exits. But the shadows twisted and coiled around them, tightening their grip on souls now paralyzed by dread. "Stay together," Sarah yelled, her voice rising above the chaos. But the darker tendrils of fear snaked toward her friends, drawing every last vestige of hope away. Faces contorted with anguish, and she could see the fight draining from their eyes. "Fight it," Sarah urged, clenching her teeth as if sheer will could hold them together. The preacher, steadfast at the front, raised his arms and bellowed defiantly, "Do not give in. Look at what we have built here." His words clashed against the encroaching shadow, but the tension thickened, suffocating them. The warmth radiating from their unity flickered like a candle in a storm. Suddenly, the voice returned, mocking, slithered with malice. "Built on lies, illusions of togetherness. When faced with the truth, you will break." There was something serpentine about its tone, an undercurrent of triumph that sent cold shivers racing across Sarah's skin. Igniting her resolve, Sarah pulled in a sharp breath. "We will rise. We have each other. I'm not letting go." The flicker of collective light remained fragile yet fierce. But the shadows were relentless, a dark tide eager to engorge their hope. As Sarah stood firm, she could feel an ancient force coiling within her, a surge of power rising from within the ashes of her fear. "Remember the stories," she cried out, rallying her friends back from the brink. "We've faced worse. This is just a test, a dark reflection of what we must overcome." The words landed heavy in the air, hope and fear wrestling in a deadly embrace. "Do you feel it?" Another voice, barely audible amidst the tumult, her friend, Jake, dangerously close to giving in. This darkness is what we've always been afraid of. What if it wins?" "It can't," Sarah shouted back, her fists clenched at her side, trembling with the weight of desperation. "Look at the light we share. We are not alone. We never were." But the shadows surged forward like an unyielding wave, swallowing the light that flickered around them. A memory struck Sarah, a shared moment of laughter at summer camp, stories told around a fire, each voice intertwining like the roots of a mighty tree. Their bond could not be severed. Not now. Not like this. With a cry of conviction, she plunged her hand into the darkness. It felt like ice against her skin, like being submerged in a frigid lake. But she grasped onto every shred of light. She'd ever felt the warmth of friendship, the love of family, the resilience that lay within. "This is our strength," she declared, drawing the fractured crowd's attention, pulling them back into the warmth. "The darkness only holds power when we allow fear to control us." And with that, she offered a hand, inviting each of them to join her, to stand firm as one. Slowly, more hands reached out, fingers entwining like vines. Together, they formed a swirling column of light, bright and defiant, pushing back against the darkness that threatened to consume them. The shadows screeched, a cacophony of despair, as the light grew brighter, gaining strength with every set of hands. But then something shifted. From the depths of the shadows came a roar so fierce, so primal, it shook the very foundations of their belief. "This is a fool's errand. They will turn on one another. They have always been weak." And suddenly, the ground beneath them split even wider, pulling Sarah closer to the chasm as her grip threatened to slip. "What if it's true?" a voice within her whispered, clawing and gnawing at her resolve. "What if they abandon you?" As the shadows reached for her, Sarah could barely breathe. Would their newfound unity be tested in this dire moment? Would she lose everything they fought for? In that heartbeat of uncertainty, she searched their eyes, fallen but not broken. And just as it seemed they might be lost, she screamed into the abyss, We will not fall apart. We are light. But the darkness clawed back, hungry for despair, more menacing than ever. A battle was on the horizon, and Sarah knew that this moment would decide everything. What choice would her friends make at the edge of annihilation? And somewhere within the shadows, a chilling smile awaited its feast. The shadows twisted and turned, coiling tighter around Sarah and the congregation. Their figures, distorted and unnerving, drew closer, hungry for despair. Sarah felt each heartbeat echoing in her ears, louder and louder. The ground quivered beneath them, a cruel reminder of how fragile their hold on hope had become. "Fight it. Don't let it take you," Sarah urged, her voice trembling yet fierce. Despite her steady determination, doubt was creeping in, threatening to whisk everyone away into the cold embrace of despair. She quickly scanned the faces around her. Fear reflected back from her friends flat and dark, shading their eyes with uncertainty. They looked so desperate, like lost souls adrift on a stormy sea. The preacher's voice resonated in the chaos, cutting through fear like a knife. "We are here for each other. Hold fast to your light. You are stronger together." His command electrified the air, sparking something deep within Sarah, a flicker of resolute strength. "Gather your minds. We are not weak. Remember the reasons we came together," Sarah shouted, her heart racing as she clutched the hands of those around her. Memories flooded in joyful laughter at barbecues, shared stories beneath the stars, every embrace weaving a tapestry of resilience that could not be unraveled so easily. With those thoughts igniting her resolve, Sarah felt a rush of power surging through her veins. "We have fought our shadows before. We won't let them claim us now. Together," she shouted, her voice unwavering, embodying hope and strength as if her spirit could pierce the very darkness itself. The congregation stood taller, each person locking eyes with one another. In that moment, courage pooled within their hearts, creating a bright, flickering light that breathed life into their shared resolve. "Stand firm," the preacher roared, channeling an unwavering surge of faith that reached out into the dark, lashing back against the shadows that had once seemed insurmountable. "We choose light. We choose love. We will not falter." The figures in the congregation rallied with newfound energy, their voices rising like thunder, deafening the malicious whispers swirling around them. "We choose light. We choose love." Each chant swelled with their fiery determination, forging an unyielding wall of strength against the approaching tide of shadows. The cloaked figure writhed against their combined voices, darkness clawing at the edges of its form as if desperate to drown out the light. "Fools! The shadows have always been a part of you. Can you face your true nature?" It screeched, each word dripping with malice. But Sarah stood firm, her resolve bolstered by the unity of her friends. "We know our truth," she shouted back. "Our light is more powerful than any darkness that lurks within. We embrace it and rise." The shadows shrieked in anger, recoiling from the intensity of their unified strength. They twisted and screamed, more like a wild wind than creatures of despair. But together, the flame of hope ignited within each heart, a blazing inferno that pierced through the darkness, illuminating the church, illuminating their hearts. And then everything changed. A blinding light erupted from their hands, a force so pure and intense that it swept over them like a tidal wave, washing away the encroaching darkness. The light expanded, illuminating every corner and crevice, revealing the reality of the cloaked figure. Beneath its shroud, the shadows began to melt away, revealing a tortured soul twisted, chaotic, scarred but not without its own faint flickering light. "Join us. We are not your enemy," Sarah cried, and the congregation echoed her cry of solidarity. "You can choose this life as we have. Free yourself from the chains of despair." At last, there was a glimmer deep within the creature's piercing eyes, a flicker of recognition, a spark of resonance with their message. They were lost souls alike, simply shaped by circumstance and pain. Though the shadows loomed large, and fear still danced at the periphery, a quiet understanding began blossoming where only turmoil had been before. The figure, still wrapped in darkness but no longer hostile, began to waver. Please, no one has ever reached out like this, it murmured, confusion masking the rage. With a mighty surge, Sarah grasped the energy of their collective will and directed it toward the figure, pure, unfiltered light flowing like a river. You can be free, she shouted. You are part of us. We have all known despair. It's never too late. Suddenly, the shadows erupted, not with anger, but with a sound that resembled a lament. They swirled and twisted, a violent storm of liberation. The community tightened their grip and stood steadfast, anchors against the chaos. Before the figure could resist, the warmth enveloped it, soothing its anguish. The darkness retreated, and where shadows once lurked, a radiant form took shape, a figure reborn from the ashes of despair. The congregation erupted in a wave of joy, their collective light blinding in its brilliance. Together, they cheered, hands raised high, hearts lifting in celebration. Together we are stronger. As everything began to settle, a hush enveloped the church. They were alive, united once again, standing against the remnants of what threatened to tear them apart. Sarah surveyed the room, relief flooding through her like a tide. They had faced their darkest hour and emerged not only in unity but with even more love than they could comprehend. But just as a new dawn settled over them, a familiar voice broke the serenity, a whisper echoing through the hallowed walls. The darkness is never truly gone, it will return, let it. Sarah responded, her voice steady. We will face it again and again. Together, we'll embrace it, learn from it and rise. With hope ignited within their hearts, the shadows may return, but so would their light. Armed with love, community, and faith in each other, Sarah and her friends stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next, resolute that surrender to light indeed changed everything. Each struggle, each fear, like faith and love, was a unified embrace that could weather any storm. So as the sun began to rise, casting gentle warmth against the church walls, their journey had only just begun. Don't miss the chance to witness more amazing stories unfold. You need to subscribe now and join our growing family. We've got more exclusive content coming your way that you don't want to miss. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm and show your love. And flood the comments section. We want to hear your reactions and theories about this explosive conclusion. Don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this journey. Together, let us spread the light and hope further than ever before.